Hello and welcome to the DisneyCast, a podcast going through and discussing all of Disney's animated films. My name is Core, and I'm joined by my co-host Jacket's Boy.
Hello.
That's him. And today we're going to be talking about Dumbo, the 1941 animated film following Fantasia.
It was animated? What?
I know, right?
Was it?
So what do you think of Dumbo, Jack?
I liked it a lot. And I thought it was very pleasant. Very nice movie. I really liked it aesthetically because we've discussed in past episodes that they took a bit of a budget drop in this movie, and you can tell Core was saying during the film, like, the shading is different, and like it's using like more just standard colors. But I like the overall aesthetic of the movie is definitely my favorite so far out of any Disney movie we've watched so far. It's very bright and poppy. It reminds me a lot of Ponyo in that sort of sense. I like it. It has the kind of pastel colors at times, and it was really pleasant.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, like, there are definitely shots that don't look great.
Yeah.
But it kind of makes up for it by having a really strongly defined aesthetic. It's kind of like, you making art out of limitations. Like, sometimes some of the best work comes out of being limited. Because
Exactly.
this film was made, on a much lower budget to recoup all the losses from Fantasia and Pinocchio. And it was wildly successful. It was like loved at the time and still well loved today.
For good reason. It's got great character, and the animation's still pretty solid overall. Just definitely not as strong as the past movies.
Yeah,
But
I
overall,
think
it was pretty consistent.
it's really just like a comparison thing. Like, you come from Fantasia and Pinocchio, which look astounding, and then it's like to see this, which is really, still at or above the level of most other animated films. And it's just like it's more noticeable in comparison.
Yeah.
But I guess, like, looking at this film, I kind of like it a lot because it is so to the point.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, like, I feel like a lot of the previous films we've talked about, a big issue with them is that they just, like, feel really stretched out. They just feel unnecessarily long. This one, everything is as brief as it needs to be. Like, you're watching it and you get to the halfway point and you're like, how are they going to resolve this in half an hour? Because the movie's only about an hour long. And then you realize they do all the things they need to do to resolve it perfectly fine with the appropriate amount of time for everything. Like, the way it's paced, I think, is really effective. It has its setup, its payoff, the themes run through the whole thing, as well as having several scenes where it can sort of just be playful and fun without necessarily needing to push the story forward. So it is really well paced and feels longer than it is, but in a good way.
Yeah, they packed so much in. It's so fast paced, and that was because when I started watching this, I was pretty tired throughout the day, and this actually got my spirits up, I think, maybe more energized, just with the extreme fast pace of this movie, and which I loved. It was definitely my favorite. This is definitely my favorite movie out of the ones we've watched so far. I was surprised because I haven't seen this movie in forever, like since I was a young child. So I was pretty surprised. So I'm happy that we watched this.
I'd also seen it quite a few times as a kid. I didn't remember too much. Like, I remembered, like, the basic story beats.
Yeah.
And a couple scenes, like, that stand out in my memory that, like, when we got to them in the movie, I was like, oh yeah, this really, like, was something that left an impression. Funnily enough, was not the pink elephant scene, as great as that is, and we'll get to that later. But it was specifically the scene of Dumbo's mom in the jail cell, and then also the scene where Dumbo is before he learns how to fly, the scene where Dumbo jumps down into the to the clowns during like the whole clown sequence when he becomes a clown. Those two left a strong impression on me for whatever reason, in particular.
Yeah, I didn't really remember too much visually. I remembered, basic, like, oh, Dumbo's mother. I remember, he flies. He has big ears, which I was thinking going into him, like, is this going to be a Pinocchio situation where they talk about his big nose, but, they only mention it once in the movie. But no, it's a key theme in the movie. So yeah. I was happy about that, how Disney didn't, market a movie wrongly to me again. But, it was true. It was a good movie.
I kind of liked just how straightforward its theme is, but it's very sweet, and I think it's pretty effectively handled. Basically, being different isn't a bad thing. Everyone has their own unique qualities, and that's represented in Dumbo initially because he's different. He gets ostracized. People look down on him, but then he finds out he has his own personal capabilities that are different from everyone else, and allow him to be successful and happy.
And then everybody likes him when he's cool.
Years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like real life.
Just like real life.
It's very
when you can fly, people like you. Fuck. If only I could fly, then people would like me.
Why do you think Lois Lane is with Superman?
That's true.
It should be obvious. It's because he can fly. No other reason.
Not because he's a big boy with a big dick. Superman probably is a big boy. That's all I have to say. Yeah. Dumbo's a cutie. When the stork first brings him down, and he arrives as a small little boy, and he's really cute, and I was like, oh, it's really cute. There's just a lot of nice moments of animals. There's like the little hyenas. The one scene you were talking about earlier with Dumbo's mom. It's like the theme of like family and
mothership in particular is like
mothership, and that's I get connected with. I have a mother, so I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. And
yeah, this is a mom. This is very much a mom movie. This is like 100% a mom movie. Like,
oh yeah, I swear, if I watched this with my mother, she'd probably like it. Hopefully, she's not an idiot, but who knows. But that one scene when it's showing all the different animals, represent like zebras and like all the, it was cool to see, because we've seen Disney loves his animals. He loves putting all these funny animals in his movies, but this one's really focused on animals instead of like keeping them as like kind of like gags, as in like in Snow White and Pinocchio.
And this one, the humans are the background characters, really.
The human are the background, like actually background characters. Like the one part when the clowns are talking and they're all silhouettes, and there's just one editing error.
We see them through the curtain as silhouettes, but there's a break in the curtain and they walk past it and they're still silhouettes.
It was interesting to see, to say the least. But I like the focus on animals in this movie. Yeah. The mouse, I think Timothy O'Mouse, he was pretty great. I wasn't sure about him at first. I thought he was going to be some like shitty Jiminy Cricket, but he's a nice guy. He encourages not Pinocchio, Dumbo, to, face his fears, and
I think generally what I would say is that like focus, like specifically that is like what makes Dumbo work, is it has a very clear sense of what it's going for. It accomplishes everything and does it effectively. Like when the film started off, I was enjoying it, but I wasn't 100% sold yet. I thought it was all right, but it hadn't really done anything for me. I feel like generally with works, what I wait for is like that one scene, right? And that to get me on board. And that came around the halfway point where after Dumbo gets like teased for his ears, and he's sort of getting harassed by the children watching him because it's a circus. The mother sort of lashes out at the children, and she gets locked up because now she's a dangerous animal.
Was that the halfway point? I think that was
that was earlier. I'm just giving the context of the scene. And then when finally, after like a bunch of struggles and stuff, Timothy finally takes Dumbo to see his mother, and like you were describing, like we see all the different animals with their mother, and we also see like specifically like them interact. Like the mother comes up and she extends her trunk, and they sort of intertwine trunks, and there's like a really heartfelt song going, and it really got me, especially because like the they're both of those elephant characters are silent through the whole movie. So it's like the intimacy of the touch means so much.
Means everything.
Yeah. Like just like
that was such a
as
good
he's
scene.
being like Timothy's like guiding him away, and they're sort of like the twist of the trunk sort of like is like yanked apart. Like it's really it's
And she's
really
reaching out.
effective.
Oh, that almost got me. I was like, oh, this is so powerful. I was surprised. I was like, am I almost gonna cry at Dumbo? But I didn't. But it was pretty damn great. No, I was gonna comment on that scene too. It was pretty great.
Yeah. I think it's also interesting. We see, I mean, specifically one of the most famous uses I recall is in one of the upcoming, I think it's actually the next one, Bambi, where it cuts from a really dramatic, somber scene to like singing and dancing, like springtime. That's pretty iconic. And Dumbo has a lot of similar scenes, nothing quite as jarring, but like the introductory sequence is this pretty like or not introductory, but there's a sequence with like the elephants and everybody working to set up the circus, and it's like raining and stormy, and they're singing a song about how they're gonna like work until they die, and then it like just jump cuts to daytime, and there's like cheerful music playing and everyone's happy. There's a couple scenes like that where it's like really juxtaposes the emotions, that I think is pretty interesting, actually. I like it.
Mm-hmm. No, I like that a lot. The juxtaposing all the emotions. If you want to talk about that pink elephant scene, though.
Okay, yeah, I guess we should address the elephant in the room.
Oh my gosh, this guy fucking core. Like, I saw his joke coming, a mile away, but I started laughing before he even finished it. But yeah, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The pink elephant scene was really great. It actually came right after the one scene with the mother and Dumbo. It's like two of the best scenes of the movie.
The clowns are drinking, and they accidentally spill one of their bottles of like champagne or whatever into his drinking water, and he drinks it, gets drunk, and Timothy falls in the water when he's trying to see what's wrong with it, and also gets drunk. And what follows is them like hallucinating this horrifying scene of these like espers, these basically they're like heffalumps before heffalumps happened, because Winnie and the Pooh doesn't come for a bit. They're like these pink elephants with like black eyes, and they're like morphing, and there's like a dope song playing the whole time about pink elephants and how spooky they are. It's really frightening and visually amazing.
Oh, Core said during it, he said, "Oh my God, it's Fantasia, but great."
Yeah,
I think that was like the framing in some of those scenes, like.
Man,
the one scene
need
when
to know
they're all surrounding the bed.
Who
was
storyboarded this scene so that I can like
a god.
I mean, they're probably
god.
dead, but I need to know so I can give them due reverence.
Yeah, I'm actually interested in that too, because pure talent went into that entire sequence. I think I did remember. I've seen that before for sure, because oh god, that sticks with me now, and that's like one of the most memorable parts of all the Disney movies so far. That and like Pinocchio's like whale scene, the one where they're
This one, it's just so much really interesting imagery, particularly because of the way it like moves in the shadows, and they play with perspective, because first it goes and the screen like goes to black, and like we see the pink elephants moving around inside of it, and like like all sorts of neat stuff to sync it up with the music, but like one of the elephants gets like stepped on, and then he splits apart into more elephants. One of the elephants like
Yeah.
grows bigger and like squishes the other one, and then they turn into a bunch of tiny elephants. All sorts of like morphing, like everything sort of swooshing around, and then they like fill up the screen. And then there's a scene where it's like focused on like a flat perspective, straight ahead shot of Dumbo and Timothy, and they're sort of, and then we have the elephants are like walking around the border of the screen, and they're watching them, and then they congeal together and fill up the screen, like just all sorts of cool stuff going. And then the scene ends with them like falling down from the skies and turning into clouds. It as the sun is rising, so the clouds are pinkish. It's great. It's just really well paced and just a great scene. It's so good. It's so good.
I just wanted it to keep going, honestly. I feel like
Pink
they
Elephants,
could do so much
the
of
movie. The movie.
that. Maybe not movie length, but maybe a couple more minutes, and I'd be still entertained. I think if they kept it at that pace.
I think it works
great.
so well because it's like this really entertaining sequence that's like definitely the most visually interesting thing in the whole movie, because I think like we described, like the aesthetic isn't quite as strong, but I think more damning, and if anything, is that I think there's less really iconic moments visually. There are definitely some, like I think like the clown sequence, like particularly where he's like looking down, and you get that real sense of like height. Those are good. But I think it's definitely, compared to the previous movies we've seen, there's less iconic imagery, and then suddenly there is just as much, because this one scene like condenses everything you could possibly want visually into like a very short sequence. So it just hits all its bases, but then also doesn't overstay its welcome, because like sometimes you have these like in between scenes, because it's not really related to anything that's happening narratively. Like, it doesn't change anything about the characters of the story. It's just a fun relief from the more dramatic tension of the previous scene. Though it's fun for us, but I imagine for a very small child, this scene would be very frightening.
Oh, God. Yeah, I feel like I'd be scared shitless from this if I watched this. Well, I definitely did see it, but I guess it didn't stick with me. But
Yeah.
if I was a little bitch, maybe I would.
I've heard many a tale of this this frightening little children. So good thing it didn't give me any nightmares.
Good thing it didn't, corrupt us, but we're good, We're good boys and we weren't corrupted. But it's still creepy. The pupilless elephants are just, seeing them close up is just terrifying. They have no eyes. And then there's one part where they show an actual eye. Like
I think
pupil,
it's like, it's specifically the fact for me is it's not like they're drawing them with like black eyes, but specifically like you can see in some of the more detailed cuts, like their eyes recede into their faces. Like there's just no eyes in their eye hole. It's just an empty eye hole, which is even creepier.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very unsettling. And that's why I love it. I love it.
Yeah, definitely the best word to describe it.
It's so good.
Moving on from that, like, the movie's pretty funny. There's some good moments. Like, a lot of the voice acting I liked. I think, I don't know, it might have been just the torrent we got, but I felt like I could hear all the lines better in this movie.
Well, that would be like a mixing thing over.
Definitely I think the mixing was better. I could, like, a lot of the dialogue I could more easily hear, like, throughout, like, for example, like, all the elephant bitches gossiping about Dumbo and shit. I
really like those characters. I mean, they're horrible people, right? But the way
they have so much personality.
Yeah, they have so much personality, and they're just so like absurd that it's really funny. Like the way they talk, they all have very distinct vocal cadences, and they're very much so the like gossiping housewives like stereotype.
It's funny. It was good.
And they're
Timothy
surprisingly
was
distinct
funny.
from one another, even though they don't get a lot of screen time.
Yeah, they do have kind of like distinct personalities. They're all kind of bitchy, but then there's like always they're a little different, and they all have their little quirks to them.
Yeah.
And which I like a lot. And Timothy's pretty good. He's a funny character. I like his design a lot. I don't know what he's doing in the circus, but
he's eating peanuts, bro. Didn't you see?
He's eating peanuts. He's just chilling out. He has. I just like how all the animals have like these weird ass outfits.
Yeah.
It's so like every animal has like some outfit. Like Dumbo's mom is wearing like the old lady kind of old time outfit, and like all the other elephants have prissy bitch housewife stuff on, and we see the racial crows, the racist crows later in the movie.
Can't say I was a big fan of that that inclusion. Like, I still think it's a pretty good movie. It was getting close to a great for me. It was getting real close to a great, and the crows came in, and like I'm sure some people liked the crows and stuff, but like, yeah, I just couldn't really get over the fact with the crows. I think it's partially like I've been taking like this for school. I had to take like an elective humanities, and so I took one about film and like African American representation. So like all of these are very clearly defined stereotypes that have roots in much more even more racist depictions. So I can't really separate it from that because they fall into the like stereotypes so blatantly. It's like really kind of off-putting, and yet this movie manages to pull through despite that. So
like I thought they were gonna go farther with it, with these like stereotypes that they're gonna, I don't know, I didn't mind them. I was definitely like bothered at first, but I like their little song because it kind of like ends off the movie. Also, the ones, it was like one of my favorite songs of the movie. I didn't think they were particularly funny, but they definitely could have been worse, and I feel like that's
definitely true. I think it's specifically that I have like I know like the context behind these types of characters, so it's like I can't really break the association between their representation in this particular film and their representation in others, because it's like it's literally like these characters, you see them everywhere in films of this time or before, like these exact same archetypes, like not different at all.
Now I've seen like there's like another Disney movie that does this. I don't remember what it is, but I thought they were okay. Like they
definitely
kinda,
not the worst, but still a little annoying.
Yeah, I was fine with the scene. I thought it was alright. Definitely weaker than the pink elephant scene though. It was
nothing could
solid
close
movie.
to that. Nothing could.
No, nothing could following it. But I like, and then Dumbo flies away, and he, the
movie wraps up really quickly, but I think it works actually.
It works well actually,
because it's like once he sort of, I mean, like really the real end of the movie is like that point where it occurs to Timothy that like, okay, so they meet the crows when they wake up from being drunk and they're in a tree. They fall down. Timothy is trying to figure out how they ended up in a tree, and he comes to the conclusion that Dumbo flew. And he's very confident about this conclusion, like extremely confident in it. Like no doubt whatsoever that Dumbo can fly now. And he sort of makes a statement, and he says it directly into the camera so that like the dumb kids really get it. He's like,
it was good. It was so funny.
You were special all along. They picked on you, but really you have something you can do, something to that effect. And that's kind of like the real end of the movie. Like that's the thematic resolution. So everything that comes after that is just like lip service to what's been resolved. So it didn't need to stick around for a really long time. So I like the way they handled it a lot.
I was expecting him to say, "Oh, I remember from last night," like, a drunkenly
No,
remember. Like,
he's just really confident.
No, he's just confident about it. They could have easily done that. Like, you always have those drunken nights, and then you're like, oh yeah, that happened, haha. But no, it's not like some hangover movie bullshit. But it was a good resolution, I thought.
Yeah, I agree. I think overall Dumbo's a pretty darn solid film, and probably maybe one of the best we've seen so far. Surprisingly so. I was kind of expecting to come to this one and not like it that much, because I already knew that it was sort of made with somewhat with the intent to like recoup the losses. So I was expecting it to be really cheap, and not just cheap like visually, but cheap like narratively, really like pandering, I guess is the word I would use. And even though to an extent I can say that, yeah, it does definitely play to what kids would like and what families would want to watch, it does feel surprisingly like genuine and heartfelt.
People put heart into this movie, and
yeah,
we can tell. And
you feel
nice. It's if there's one word I would say, is it's just so pleasant. It's just so nice.
For sure. Well, I think that's about a good point to wrap it up. We definitely have a lot less to say, but that's because this film is a lot shorter. I mean, it's literally half the length of the last movie we watched. So, there's just less to cover material-wise, and obviously it's not a very intricate or complex story, but it tells its story well, I think. So, yeah, Dumbo, good movie.
Good movie.
Thanks for listening. Subscribe, smash that like button, leave a comment. Support me on Patreon. I got to get everything out of the way. I've been your host, Core. Been joined by Jack his boy. Check his channel out in the description. And we'll see you next week.
See ya.